But there's a headline on page 12 of the Standard: Woman pleads for justice from police. Mbithe says, a woman who was mauled by a wild animal after being thrown out of a truck has pleaded with police to help track down the crew. Talking about Irene Mbithe, who was mauled on the night of July 30th after she was thrown out of a truck next to Servo National Park. She says a truck crew that had offered her a lift from Mombasa was attempting to rape her. When they noticed a police roadblock ahead, they threw her into the darkness in a wildlife-infested stretch of the Mombasa-Nairobi highway, and she was later saved by police. My panelists this morning: Martha Wangari. It's been a while. MP Gilgil, it's good to have you on this panel.
It's good to be back in the Muli.
This is actually your first time in this new studio.
Actually, since you
in
rebranded.
this now old studio.
Oh yes, and it's a bigger one. I think it's much better.
Much bigger, much brighter.
And I'm happy to have my voice back. My constituents know I've not been picking their phone calls.
That's the main reason why you've been unavailable, even on for the news review.
Yeah, but I thank God now my voice is much better.
You sound much better.
Yeah, and I'm back in circulation.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Good to have you. Yeah. We also hope to have Makueni MP Dan Maanzo joining us shortly. But this is one of those sad stories that get hidden in the inside pages of the dailies.
Yeah.
And probably just a quick comment on it as we move to the bigger headlines. This woman just hiked a lift in one of those trucks that go to Mombasa.
In fact, the story, and I read it, she was coming from Nairobi, going to Machakos, but she was given some drink or something. As she explained, she found herself in Mombasa. Yeah, with no money, stranded, so she hiked another lift back now to Machakos, and that is where they started for asking for sexual favors that she's refused. As she struggled and screamed, that's when she attracted the police and the attention of the policemen, and they threw her out actually with her bags, and I think it was really inhuman. And she's lucky to be alive because she says what attacked her looked like a cheetah or a leopard. And you can see her left hand was amputated, and the nurses, her eye is gouged out, and she lost a limb, she lost a left hand. And I really hope that there is a way of tracking, because the police that saved her, they could have stopped that track, because really it hadn't gone so far to be able to bring the culprits to book. And I think these are just some of the abuse cases that we are seeing every day. And I think even yesterday, I think I watched on Citizen TV a very sad story of a 44-year-old who was also a left eye gouged out from violence from the husband. And I think some of these abuse cases are becoming more evident day by day. Do you think
we're losing our humanity because even cases of spouses killing each other?
No, it's getting out of hand.
It's easier to attack a fellow human being. We're busy protecting money and other property, but when it comes to the life of a human being, it's much easier. You don't even care about this person. You throw them out when you know wildlife. They're wild animals there. Yeah,
they knew exactly. And I think even for the spouse and the violence attacks, we really are losing it as a community. And more importantly, I've said it before in this panel, in marriage setups, we really must relax the laws to be able to let people walk out. If a relationship is toxic, we must get a way of making it easier to walk out. And I think because this is usually piled up, anger, this woman, like I was watching yesterday, said she's been abused for the last 22 years. It can't just happen in one day, but it just keeps happening and happening. And I think, I don't know how we reclaim humanity. You cannot legislate on it. You cannot make laws for humanity. We can only maybe pray that we are able to regain it and become human beings again.
Dan Maanzo, MP Makueni, good morning. Karibu sana.
Good morning.
Also good to have you on the panel this morning. We've decided to start with the inside pages, not the usual way we do with the front page of the news. And we just decided to look at this story on page 12 of the Standard, where a woman pleads for justice from police. This woman, Irene Mbithe, was thrown out of a moving truck along Mombasa Road, the Mombasa-Nairobi highway, by the driver and turnboy of a truck on which she had hiked a lift, and she ended up being mauled by wild animals. And we're talking about the fact that as a society we seem to have lost our humanity, that you would do this to a fellow human being simply because she has refused your sexual advances. Then we tied also with this other very many headlines that we see every day, and we rarely get to discuss them on this panel, of domestic abuse, where it's much easier to kill or to injure or to maim your fellow human as opposed to just doing other things. We're busy protecting property and money, but when it comes to the life of your fellow human being, anything goes.
Yes, what happened in this matter is very sad, and a good Samaritan actually saw this truck throw someone out. This good Samaritan picked the details of this truck, and where she was thrown out, most probably that area, she was attacked by hyenas. And you know, when you are lie down, hyenas actually do attack. But if you're up, if you are standing up, they will run away, unless in very rare occasions. So this particular Good Samaritan reported to the police on patrol. There are quite a number of police cars on that highway at night. And the police quickly rescued her because they thought someone had been killed and thrown out, and also followed the truck. So I believe when she pleads for justice from police, really police should take it up upon themselves, make sure they bring these people to book, because they are going to abuse other people.
Yes, and unfortunately, Kibwezi OCPD Ben Changulo has said it would be difficult to identify the offenders because the details of the truck were not available. But you say the Good Samaritan saw the saw the details of this truck.
Yes, and the police, and actually police followed up.
Yes,
and got this truck. So they should not be allowed to get away with the little information which is there. I am sure they can be identified. This lady will be able to identify them on an identification parade, because this is attempted murder. This is very serious, and as you are saying, you know, let the courts and the police system and ourselves protect each other. And unless people know that there are serious punishments when you threaten or risk somebody's life, then this is going to go on, and we are going to lose more lives and lose the face of humanity, simply because our systems are not working. So we should not conceal evidence. We should not conceal criminals. You know, bribes should not be taken, and the criminals are let to go away. The investigating officer is a very crucial person in this. I'm sure they can be able to find these people.
Even as police say that this is an official statement that they are unable to follow the track, that Kenyans need to know and understand that in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the right to life, I think, is among the top.
But I think
it is your right.
I think our Kenyan police are also very interesting sometimes. I know their work is usually very hard, difficult, and but they work if they want to. Recently, we had an expose of someone from your area, Mheshimiwa, for the life insurance.
Yes.
Yes. The one who would kill their uncle or their nephew to get life insurance. It took a media expose for them to actually now take it up. I mean, if they want to work, they can work, because that case was taken up, he was locked up, he was charged. Why hadn't they done that for 2 years until it got someone to actually bring it up to the attention of the police? I think if we take our work seriously, even the police themselves, they have the capacity, and we have seen them do it. Even in the recent attack on someone which I saw on the newspapers, where a wife had planned for the killing of the husband, and the detectives actually had him pose like he's dead, and they caught them like a drug, you know, in a net, with the relatives, that we've killed him, now go check. It was in Kayole, I think. And they had actually covered him with blood. I mean, if they want to do these things, they can, because the communication, we are usually now very linked in terms of mobile networks. If you really want to catch a culprit, even in these murder cases, you can actually do it very easily.
Over now to the police, of course, they definitely can do it better. Now, let's go back to the big headlines on the front page of the Daily Nation. Teachers deal 30,000 to get higher grades. But the main headline, and I think what many teachers and students and pupils as well may be looking for, is whether or not there'll be a strike next week. Now, this is where we have a dilemma today, because on the Daily Nation, they talk about big relief as teachers union calls off strike. That's the Daily Nation. But on the Standard, they say strike looms as KNUT makes new demands. We're still hoping to get Wilson Sossion, the KNUT Secretary General, at some point on this show to give us clarity, because even if we discuss either of these headlines, it would not be to the benefit of our audience unless we get clarity on that matter. Let's now move on to Twitter, because this is one of the biggest channels now where leaders are choosing to express themselves. And yesterday, William Samoei Ruto, the Deputy President of this Republic, tweeted, "Those running Injili ya Shetani, that unless your father was a minister, a vice president, or a president, however hard you work, you must remain poor, and if not a pauper, you must be corrupt and have stolen. They should know that those without godfathers, we have God the Father. Shindwe." Now, this is a tweet that was posted yesterday. It has attracted 2.6, this is 2,600 likes. and 899 retweets so far. But remember, this was the second time it was being posted. It was posted again at 6:35 p.m. yesterday. It had earlier been posted at around around 2 p.m. and then pulled down. That initial tweet had attracted even bigger numbers. Now we're seeing the same comeback. But of course, we know why he was responding, of course, to that Ipsos survey that ranked him and the governor for Kirinyaga among the most corrupt individuals in Kenya. That debate still continues. But do you think that Twitter is a best route? We've seen what is happening with Donald Trump in the United States.
It is a route.
And
it is a route.
But do you think that it is a best channel, probably communication channel, for a leader of such status? If President Uhuru Kenyatta was to use his Twitter handle the way President Trump does to attack individuals or to express personal opinions on things, because the president's Twitter handle has been very official so far. He rarely uses it for any other purpose. But we are seeing a change in William Ruto's Twitter handle. Now this is getting personal.
I think if you ask whether it's the best route, I will say it's a route. And I think
it is definitely a channel.
It is a channel. And our media and communication has really changed. Even yourselves, even in the media houses, you really have to concentrate in the new media, because that is where your market is. In fact, fewer and fewer people are watching news nowadays. You don't need to. I just need to follow you and follow the Twitter handle of Citizen. I can know actually what transpired in the news without having to watch the whole broadcast, because you've put it in a summarized form, 140 characters that I can easily synthesize and digest, and it's more palatable. So you don't blame Honorable William Ruto. I think yesterday, just as a human being, I think he got to a boiling point, because it really came out, and he was all out yesterday. And
it must have been a very raw emotion, because he
had to pull it down. Then, but he used both yesterday. He used Twitter, and he also used the mainstream media. If you checked both of them in terms of communicating the same message, he did that in his current office, and he later did that in Kisii as he attended a public forum, wherever it was, I think for Boda Boda. But I think it's just as a human being that he was reacting to the constant, in fact he said constant headlines that link him to this, link him to that, and he's he's free to do that. We've seen world leaders use Twitter handles, and we have seen Trump as the worst example, because he has used it as, I would say he has used it as a careless teenager.
The question is because there is a risk of just verbalizing, or probably just expressing raw emotion when you're angry, because it's a channel that is available to you, and you can use it at any time. Some of us do it, but we are not at the status of the deputy president or the president. And they're still human, so they do get angry. He must have realized immediately after posting that tweet at 2 p.m. that probably it's a bit too much. But people had already taken screenshots, and it had been retweeted. So he realized probably later in the day that the damage is already done. Let me just put it back. But don't you think that probably in hindsight, he felt that probably I should not have done that, because the tweet that followed was much more measured?
He must have had second thoughts.
Yes, I think he must have had second thoughts. And first of all, you know what Ipsos does is just people's opinion, like what you call a people's court. So that's the perception people of Kenya now have on this too. And the problem with corruption is those, and especially when you are looting public coffers, you see those who work with you. No. And when people are looting public coffers, they use brokers, and you are not alone. So what happens if the deals go sour? They start leaking information that part of the properties you have, or part of the money you have, is from public coffers. And you see, for any Kenyan,
whether true or not.
Whether true or not. Yes. But I'm saying that there is usually a basis, or someone inside, or someone within you. Releases that information to the public. And that's why, even if he tweets, you see, whether your father was a minister, whether a lot of us have struggled, from far. And we can be able to account for what we have. You can be able to show it. If you have unusual monies, it will still show, because you must be in a certain sort of business which is known, taxes must be paid, you should be able to account, and if you account properly, Kenyans will clear you. But if you are unable to account, this is something you cannot remove whether you tweet or you retweet or you withdraw the Twitter, it remains with Kenyans, and you have to prove to them with the time. And again, also, you know, this public perception, if it were to be taken to court, of course, it will be proven beyond reasonable doubts, and you'll either be convicted or acquitted. So I believe in a fight of against corruption, you know, we've got to be truthful to each other. And the Bible is very clear, you know. You remember Zacchaeus. So for those who have stolen, return 4 times, and Kenyans will clear you.
Well, I want to say something. Yes. You know, because, you know, one thing you must agree is that Kenyans are really retreat to religion. And that is all of us, you know, even the ones accused, even the ones who have accused others. But my take on this fight on corruption, for me, we also must separate politics from it. Really, we must. And if you ask me, in terms of a perception, how do you do, you know, how do you do a Synovate or an Ipsos poll on corruption? I'll look at you in Ndimuli and say, you don't look like you can afford that suit. Or I look at you and say, who do you think between these two is more corrupt? If you ask me, the reason the deputy president reacted the way he did, I think just as a person, because if you do a constant narrative, then at the end of it, you run a poll.
But isn't
to validate?
Isn't
no, I'm
the
just
same
saying
thing
to
that is
validate.
done probably in the US when you're rating approval for the president, and they keep talking about the approval rating, yes,
the most popular,
and that is still public perception.
It is public perception.
Measured on any.
It is public perception. Yes. But if you ask me, you know, the fight for corruption, and that is why you see out of the procurement officers that had been netted in the recent swap, there were 1,300. We all like put them in one basket. But they were taken through a series of tests to actually realize who is corrupt, who has been implicated, how much do you pay for your children, how do you afford that. You're taken through a series of tests, and 400 are the ones who have actually been cleared from the figures that we have. So it means the others have cases to answer one way or another. But in the beginning, there were 1,300. Yes. And they were all condemned. In fact, we weren't even sure, even in Parliament, whether our procurement goes or not, because it was a presidential directive that they all step aside. But it is a series of, even this one, if you ask me, the way it is right now, it just serves the public in terms of for discussion.
Are you saying we've already demonized the job of a procurement officer, that
you see,
you cannot introduce yourself?
Oh yes, people now fear that job.
My name is Freddy Ndimuli, I'm a procurement officer.
Because you're already seen as corrupt.
Yes.
Yeah, because you'll say, how do you afford, and you were paid 30,000, you're a junior procurement officer by the public service, and you're paid 40,000, and you come to Harambes and give more money than we do, you know, so it also, but I think this must also be subjected to proper, you know, tests. And I think if you look at what the governor for Kirinyaga said, for me, what I don't agree with is when you say that don't ask me, and if you continue asking me, I will name the people behind NYS. For me, if you have those names, by the way, it is not even a favor.
It means
you are actually obliged.
Yes.
You are actually obliged to give those names to the relevant authorities. If you think someone is guilty, do not threaten to do it.
And,
you know,
the other issue is, and talking about the governor for Kirinyaga, is the fact that she said she will take Ipsos to court, the people who conducted this poll. Do you think this is something that you can actually take to court, a poll on public perception?
Well, you see, it's about defamation, and you see how you clear defamers is if there's justification. So if you take them to court, of course, both sides, their lawyers will defend each other. And I believe if you really know that you are innocent and you can prove your innocence, you can take them to court. But the problem is if they plead justification and they justify, then you are in more trouble. Because now you'll be exposed
if they actually say that, if they actually provide proof that they conducted a scientific poll.
Yes, and also if
some it will be more damaging to
yes, and some of the people who interviewed, if they provide the evidence, you see the problem is when she was investigated and out of probably weak systems, she was never taken to court. And the problem is powerful people are not being taken to court. You can imagine, even if you had good evidence, sufficient evidence, and you took the deputy president today to court, you can imagine the political implication. And what it will be. But I think we now need to be strong and very firm on the fight against corruption. Let everybody who is senior in the country and who is wealthy and deals with public matters account the source of their wealth and the business they conduct. I mean,
okay, and probably the deputy president and the Kirinyaga governor may feel more aggrieved because probably they were ranked highest in that list. But on the list, we also had other names, including the president and Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, former president Daniel Moi. And we've not seen or heard these leaders even come and comment anything about this. Yet it is a fact they were on that list. Because probably, is it that they understand it's simply public perception? Or
and again, they were not number one.
Or just not being number one is
they were not number one. They were also not number one.
If you were listed as number 9, probably among the top 10, would you most corrupt according to public perception? Would you move to court?
It's not move to court per se, but it is not a good list to be on, really. For anyone, it should bother us that we are now ranking people on corruption. As in, our approval rates are not even on suitability. Like you say, in the US,
but it is a real problem.
They are on who is more corrupt. I think as a country, we should be more worried about that. That our approval ratings and what we are dealing with is on corruption. Even some parliamentarians were on that list. Yeah, even some senators were on that list in terms of perception. And I think continuously, Kenyans are also getting tired. And you can see it even on Twitter. When he put that tweet, the first one, the slack he got immediately, or rather, the response from Kenyans was really something you'd be interested to read and get the frustrations of Kenyans.
And even the tweet I'm reading now, the first comment coming immediately after that is not very empathetic of the deputy president, and I cannot even read it. And it's still receiving likes as I look at it. The numbers keep changing like those old electricity meters. The kind of flack that the deputy president got from this, probably even the channel he chose, may not be very appropriate for him because it's generating quite a lot of debate online.
Yes, and there are very many haters, and he has declared that he wants to run for president. And for us to be able to eliminate corruption, we must make sure that those who are in office are not beneficiaries of corruption, whether by perception or by whatever method. You remember President Obama did not have that much wealth, but it was clear to people, and they donated to his campaign kitty, such that the people owned his campaign. I think it should be the similar thing in Kenya. What I want to tell leaders, and it is the truth, because Cain did it and lost terribly. You do not go and give, and the churches should not accept stolen offerings. Because you offer to God and he knows what you are offering is stolen.
How do you prove that it is stolen? How do you tell good money or bad money from the church's perspective?
The person himself, it is between that particular person and God. And it should never happen really in churches, because people should know, individuals should know, whatever you have stolen, please don't go and give it as offering to God, because it will not be accepted. But you can actually will bring upon yourself curses.
Yeah. I think, in the last parliament, in 11th parliament, we had the now governor for Kisumu bring a bill to the Senate that was outlawing harambes. And the reason, and his argument was that if we do not have these fundraisers, we'll also be able to stem the appetite to be able to acquire as much money, because every time you go back to your constituency, Mheshimiwa Maanzo, in this weekend, I'm sure you have like 10 harambes minimum to go to. You have a salary that you're supposed to contribute a minimum of say 10,000 in those harambes. And Professor Nyong'o had a very good argument. But we also saw as senators then that if you stifle that spirit, there are some genuine harambes that will suffer. Harambes for medical expenses that will suffer from this total ban. And the idea now was to regulate. And that's why you see when it's run up to the elections, we actually have a law that outlaws harambes. But I think we must also get a way of dealing with it in a more regulated manner, so that we are able to stem this appetite, even for the public themselves, to keep asking and expecting you to have so much money to give in harambes and not need to actually justify how you got that money.
Okay. Now, curiously, the choice of pictures on both dailies this morning on the front pages, on the Standard and on the Daily Nation, they've decided to use the same photo of the deputy president and the governor for Kirinyaga and Waiguru. Very interesting. It's like the editor sat somewhere and decided that that was a photo of the day. Let's now take a break. When we come back, we take a look at other headlines, a very interesting one, and this one will definitely be of importance to many Kenyans who have or are servicing loans or who are hoping to get loans from banks. Victory for borrowers as MPs retain law on rates. Financial institutions shall set maximum interest rate chargeable at no more than 4% of the base rate. But what is a central bank rate according to what the MPs now want it to be? That after the break.